West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, and back live in the flesh with me as ever is my partner in crime, Santokie Nagilendran. Santokie, how you doing?
Yeah, all good, Mash. Good to be back. And as we record this, it's 2-0 to the Aussies against West Indies, which a lot of people would expect. But I think, Mash, this sort of shows me how sort of batter-centric people view Test cricket in terms of people are saying this is an abysmal Test series. You know, the batters aren't performing, no one's scoring big. From my perspective, we're essentially seeing a very good West Indies bowling lineup against the generational all-star Aussie bowling lineup, and you're seeing basically the ball dominating. But obviously, with the inconsistency with the bat, it's been a massive talking point, sort of in terms of performances, not only for West Indies but also for Australia. And we're here, Mash, as always, to talk about the current hot topic in the region, which is Kraigg Braithwaite. Now, currently in the Australia series, Kraigg Braithwaite is an unprecedented down bad. He's averaging 3.75. So of all the players that have batted in the two tests so far, he's the second lowest, 3.75 average across 4 innings. And so far this year, he's averaging 12.37 in Test cricket. Now, this has got the region talking. Obviously, Kraigg Braithwaite, a stalwart in the side for the last 15 years. Darren Sammy's come out and said, you know, there's a lot of pressure on Braithwaite. Considerations have to be made ahead of the third test at Sabina Park, starting on Saturday. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure against Kraigg Braithwaite. Mash, let's talk about it. So Kraigg Braithwaite, for me, he just looks like he needs a break. He's someone who needs to not necessarily go away from West Indies cricket forever, but needs a break, needs to be refreshed. What's your sort of initial impression of sort of what we're seeing of Kraigg Braithwaite in 2025?
So first things first, I think we get that statement out of the way. Yes, I agree. He needs a break. I'm expecting him to be dropped, rested, call it whatever you want. At Sabina Park, I suspect that Machel will come in. I think the pressure has just reached too much of a crescendo. And whilst Kraigg has always been a player who has like strong mental strength and character, and the thing is, Santokie, I think it's also important to raise to people, he's come back from something like this before. I went back and looked at some of our old tweets when Caribbean Cricket Podcast started, and circa 2020, I remember it because it was when they went to New Zealand. And one of the reasons I remember it is because I remember Nikhil saying to me at the time, Kraigg will get through this. That's the reason I remember this, right? Because I think I was saying on podcasts back then, ahead of that New Zealand tour, Kraigg needs to get dropped, you know. And then a few months later, he was the captain because obviously everyone ducked out of the Bangladesh series, right? But just to put in perspective, Santokie, in 2018, Kraigg... So actually, let me go back before that. In 2016, Kraigg played 8 test matches and averaged 56 for the year. In 2017, Kraigg played 10 test matches and averaged 37 for the year, right? Now listen to this stretch. In 2018, he played 9 test matches and averaged 24. In 2019, he played 6 test matches and averaged 17. In 2020, he played 5 test matches and averaged 23. So he's had a down bad era before, right? That was a 3-year down bad era between 2018, 2019, 2020. And I remember that at the time I said, boy, Kraigg needs to get dropped. And at the time, Santokie, the only reason he didn't get dropped was because 1, he was experienced, and 2, similar to now, Santokie, there was also a bit of an acknowledgement that, yeah, but there's no one else to replace him. Like everyone else in the region is just as down bad or more down bad than him. So if we drop Kraigg, are we going to play 2 brand new openers? And from that period, we had man like Solazano come through, Kieran Powell came back again, Machel Lewis had a chance. Bare man have played alongside Kraigg Braithwaite since Chris Gale retired from Test cricket. And none of them, literally, Santokie, none of them have succeeded, right? So that's not me launching any strong defense of Kraigg. I'm just saying he's been through this before. But this time it just feels like this one feels a tiny bit different because this one feels like he, as you said at the jump, he looks tired.
Yeah.
He looks mental. I don't know how you tell that somebody looks mentally tired. He looks drained, Santokie. He looks like, you know, when like an older footballer, I'm not saying they've lost their legs. I'm not going as far as that, but you know when it's like they don't look to have that same energy again, and they have to like almost reinvent their game to wheel and come again at the back end of their career. That's what it looks like right now.
Yeah, I think at the moment he looks like a walking wicket, which we don't associate with Braithwaite for the whatever past years. Despite his inconsistent averages, he's always been someone when he comes out to bat, when he comes out to open, you think, okay, he's someone he's going to grind out, he's going to soak up a few balls, he's going to try and put some pressure on the bowlers. Now he just looks like a walking wicket. He's tired, and I think my own theory would be I think the captaincy burned him out. Right? I think remember there he said he was going to quit after the first test in Pakistan. Andre Kohli convinced him to stay on for the miracle in Multan, but that alone tells you what his mental state was at the time. If man was willing to quit mid-series, it shows you that sort of the pressure was getting to him. And I think captaincy, especially of West Indies cricket as well, when you're coaching or captaining different islands and different sort of cultures and everything, it's a tougher job than any other Test captaincy job. And I think just the pressure of it all kind of took its toll on him, and you're kind of seeing that now in his performances. And considering Mash, if you think about it, the first test was at his home ground, the Mecca at Kensington Oval. The second test was his 100th test. If anything, those two reasons alone should have been motivation for him to put up a big score, right, in either of those tests, just what it would have meant to him. So the fact that he's performing like that in sort of two massively important tests for him personally shows you sort of how his mental state is at the moment, and his form and inconsistency. So I agree. I think the fact that I don't think Darren Sammy would say that we're considering Braithwaite's place if he was going to keep him in the side. I expect to see Braithwaite dropped out of the third test, and the most obvious candidate would be Machel Louis coming in. A lot of people will disagree and say, Louis only averages 19 in Test cricket. But at this point in time, you've got to just make a change, I think. If Braithwaite's averaging 3.75, it doesn't look like it's changing at the moment. Louis, for all his sort of flaws, he's someone who fits the Darren Sammy motto of being able to score quickly. We've seen it in white ball cricket as well. He can kind of up the strike rate. So I don't think Louis is going to solve the opening conundrum with John Campbell, but it will probably make a slight improvement, at least for the third test from Sabina Park. And then after that, Sammy can sort of regroup with his coaches and look at sort of the opening slots. But Mash, it's interesting. Yeah, just looking at Kraigg Braithwaite's averages as well. As much as we talk about him being a stalwart, like you said, 2014, he averaged 77, 2016, 55. But then in between that, 2018, 24, he averaged 2019, averaged 16. Then out of nowhere in 2022, he came out when he scored big runs against England, Australia, averaged 62. So he's been someone who's been inconsistent generally year by year. But overall, in terms of West Indian batters, the fact he's averaged out about 32 across his career, that's probably as consistent as you can get in the current generation of players. The one thing I will ask you, Mash, just to move on now, is Kraigg Braithwaite doesn't play any T20 cricket, right? He plays Super 50 here and there. If he is dropped from the side, how does he get back into the Test side? Because there's no first-class season until next year. Is it a case of waiting that long period of time? Would you put him on more A-team tours? It'd be interesting to see how Sammy kind of devises a plan to get Kraigg Braithwaite in, because as much as he's out of form now, you wouldn't want to see him discarded from the setup completely.
Well, we have to understand that possibly, let's say Kraigg holds a drop. There's an argument to say that Kraigg turns around after this series and goes, I'm retiring from international cricket. Yeah. Not in response to holding a drop, but in just because he may already be thinking about something like that. He's played a long time. Man debuted at 18, was it? He's played a long time in international cricket. So for all we know, Craigg's actually reaching the end and say, because Craigg's actual passion is horse racing, if I'm not mistaken. So for all we know, Craigg's like, you know what? I'm about to turn 33. I've played 100 Test matches. The legacy doesn't get any better than this. Now, I was about to say you go out at the top. Obviously, he's going out on a bit of a downer, but he may just say, now's the time. Or he takes a break to work out, do I still have that hunger and drive to come back again and still make runs? And I think it would depend on things like, does he want to end his career with a Test match average of 35, which I would say is the benchmark of acceptability internationally, right? If he's got a desire to come back and do that, then maybe I can see him come back. And also, Santokie, we have to be realistic. As much as people in some media circles, fan circles, whatever, have called for him to be dropped, do we realistically expect any opener from now till thy kingdom come to average over 28? No. So we can cuss and we can say Kraigg needs to go, but I'm not seeing anyone anytime soon doing anything better than Kraigg.
Yeah, and just to put it in perspective, when he made his debut, I think against Pakistan in 2011, he opened with Lendl Simmons, Brendan Nash was in the side, so that sort of shows you how long Kraigg Braithwaite's been around. He sort of linked the two generations, and I'm with you, Mash. It wouldn't. I'm not expecting it, but it wouldn't surprise me if Braithwaite retired from international cricket after this series. And as you said, he's got other passions. Horse riding's big in Barbados, and he owns a few horses, from what I understand, and that's sort of a passion there. So we could see him just go from international cricket. It'd be a shame for West Indies cricket, but this also leads to the point, Mash. I don't necessarily think Braithwaite, based on what Sammy sort of wants from the Test side, I don't think Braithwaite suits what Sammy's looking for in the Test side. So I think the fact that Sammy's head coach might accelerate Braithwaite's push from the West Indies side, because I think if it was Andre Kohli, you might see Braithwaite stay a bit longer. But I think with Sammy emphasizing, he wants players to score quickly now. There's no point doing the grind ball thing. He wants players with intent. Braithwaite doesn't suit that. And the fact that, for me, it's very unusual. This is probably the first time it's happened to Braithwaite. The West Indies coach has essentially said to Braithwaite, like, look, we're considering your place. And he said that publicly in a press conference.
So surplus to requirements.
Yeah, exactly. And that speaks volume, because normally a head coach defends his players, right? He doesn't put them out there like that. So the fact Sammy's done that, I think sort of subliminally shows that Sammy's not really thinking Braithwaite's in his plans for the long term. So I think the change of coach for the West Indies Test side as well has accelerated Braithwaite's probable decision to leave the side if he does retire from international cricket. But as you said, Mash, we're looking around now. We can go back to Louis for one test. Louis not the answer long term. When we go to India, who are we going to open with? When we go to New Zealand, who are we going to open with? There's no opener in the region who can sort of compete with Kraigg Braithwaite. As bad as his stats are in the last year or so, overall, in terms of what he's produced for West Indies, and we've seen him bounce back from lows, like you said, there's no other alternative option. So who are we just going to groom a youngster to come in and say, look, we'll give you tests, we'll give you 10 or so tests to kind of get in there? Or are we going to go back to a Solazano? Are we going to stick with Louis? There's not many options, Mash.
So this is where people who are watching this will get in the comments and say, yes, there is. Pick this person, pick that one. Every single option is dead up. Every single option, right? So the only option long term, I'm looking at someone like Akeem Orgeese, who, well, no, but he doesn't really open in. I don't know if he opens in red ball. I mean, he's just had a bit of a good time of it with the. I'm trying to remember if he opens in red ball cricket, but he's just had a good time of it with the academy. Long term, you're looking at them trying to groom somebody from the academy. Really and truly, that's what you're looking at, to say, right, long term, we are going to make sure that by the time you reach 25 years old, 24, 25, you have enough first class experience to be able to come into the West Indies Test side as an opener. That's the way I see it. So maybe we look at someone like an Akeem Orgeese. I don't know, in the long term. In the meantime, Santokie, it's basically chuck shit at the wall until we see what. No, but it is, though, isn't it? It's chuck shit at the wall until we see that something sticks. And put this, I don't care. People can tell me there's a method, there's a rhyme, there's a reason, etc. That's nonsense to me. Whoever ends up doing well, and by doing well, Santokie, let's not get this twisted. Doing well, the metric is, can you average the same as Kraigg Braithwaite? So doing well means, can anyone average 32, 33? And that isn't going to happen through anytime soon by just picking players because they scored runs in first-class cricket. It will only happen because someone gets picked and it just happens to click for whatever reason. But the evidence suggests that's not going to be happening anytime soon. I do want to address something, though, Santokie. Two things I want to quickly address. The first one is, I feel there's been a bit of disrespect around Kraigg Braithwaite's name. There's a lot of people that were messaging us on X going, he's the worst player to play 100 test matches and things like that. And I found that slightly disrespectful, because whether he is or whether he isn't is irrelevant to me. We're talking about the West Indies here. Yeah. There's no point in comparing a modern day West Indian player to other nations. There's no point in telling me, he's the worst player to play 100 tests. Everybody in the West Indies is the worst player for anything. So there's no point in saying he's the worst player to play 100 tests. You can only look at it in the context of West Indian legacy. So for me, he is to be respected for even reaching 100 tests, because I think you said it. I think you tweeted it. We ain't ever going to see that again.
Never.
They don't look like we'll see it again. So I'd rather focus on, you know what? Well done to Kraigg for getting to 100 and not playing any T20 cricket, because that in itself is a legacy now.
Yeah, I'm looking at that record as in raw. He actually played 100 tests for West Indies. With us playing 4, 5, 6 tests a year, man actually made it to 100. I don't know why so many people are messaging us about he's the worst player, because these men are comparing it to like a Steve Smith or a Joe Root or something like that. But I'm thinking, in and of itself, for a West Indian player to reach 100 tests and still manage to average over 30, it's a modern day miracle, Mash. So
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, do you know what? And also, Kraigg managed to average over 30 with no partner.
that's what I mean. Like.
He's had no partner for the whole time, apart from Gale. He's had no partner for his whole career.
Yeah, these times man's been batting with John Campbell, Solizano. These times struggling out here just to find. Remember what was it against the UAE when man had to just carry his bat through the whole innings, bro?
Against Pakistan. That was against Pakistan. Yeah,
he just carried his bat. So for me, you can't disrespect Kraigg Braithwaite's name. I think you said it a lot, Mash. I think it's social media and recency bias. Yeah, people are quick to shout and have hot takes and all this stuff. But when you sit back and you sort of reflect on what Braithwaite's achieved in the modern game for West Indies, I know people want to say, "Oh, West Indies used to be a great team," and look at Viv Richards and Clive Lloyd. For the 21st century West Indies side, it's unprecedented that Kraigg Braithwaite's managed somehow to get to 100 tests and average over 30. Now, people are going to comment below and say the usual, you lot are jokers, you're taking the mick out of West Indies cricket. Look at the man coming in, Casey Carty, Mikhail Louis. These men are playing to get average over 20. So for Braithwaite to get to 100 tests over 30, we have to salute, Mash. Tears in my eyes, for that one. He's the modern day Badman out here, bro. So I don't know what people are, and the thing is, if you study West Indies cricket, you'll be grateful. I'm sure true West Indies fans are grateful that Braithwaite hit 100 tests and what the service he's given West Indies cricket. Because Mash, imagine the last 15 years without Kraigg Braithwaite. Can you imagine how down? You think it was down bad with him in the side? Can you imagine without the side?
So if you look at it right now, I was just looking at these are his test performances versus opponents. So he's played 14 test matches against Australia. He averages 22. So in fairness, like I said, I'll just read it. People can make their own judgments. 14 test matches against Bangladesh. He averages 43. 18 test matches against England. He averages 39. 13 test matches against India. He averages 24. 7 test matches against New Zealand, he averages 40. 11 test matches against Pakistan, he averages 34. 9 matches against South Africa, he averages 19. 9 matches against Sri Lanka, he averages 33. And 4 matches against Zimbabwe, he averages 56, right? So in essence, his only down bad opponents in his whole career is Australia, India, South Africa. Everyone else, he has a more than respectable average against. I just don't see. And I read that out because we might not see that again. We might not. Never mind the 100 test matches. I just mean people who average well against 3/4 of the test playing nations. Like we may not see that again. So. I get it because he only averages 33 after 100 tests, but in the context of West Indies cricket, that 33 is equivalent to probably 40 when you look at the modern day context of it all.
Yeah, and also no disrespect to the openers he's played with. So, for instance, Kieran Powell's played 44 tests, average 25. John Campbell's played 22 tests, averages 25 again. If other players that are partnering with him for a substantial amount of tests are averaging 25 and Braithwaite's averaging 32, it's not a massive margin, but the fact like you said, the fact he is averaging over 30 is something you have to respect in the modern day era for West Indies cricket because no one else is doing it. We can't compare West Indies to Australia and England and their batters and their performances. If you look at it in the context of West Indian batters only, no one else is doing it like Kraigg Braithwaite. So we can't really disrespect him out here. So we have to salute what he's done. And like you said, Mash, I think we could very well have seen the last of Kraigg Braithwaite in West Indies colours, which is mad to think. But if he is dropped as we think he might be for the third test in Sabina Park, who knows if we will see it there. But one thing is for sure, we can't tarnish sort of what he has done for West Indies cricket in the test arena over the last 15 years.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it's the drop off since 2024, you know, Santokie, because up until I don't know, up until that, you know, when he started to have, when he had that drop off in 2019, 2020, he was actually averaging 37 up until the middle of 2018. In fact, he got up to 38 in the middle of 2018, right? Then he had that mad drop off in 2019, 2020. He recovered it again in 2021, 2022, 2023, right? So by the start of 2024, his test match average was actually 35. So it's mad that 2024 and 2025 drop off has seen his average drop down to 32, 33. So I'm not saying that there's a mitigating factor, but I do think it's fair to say that this is a recent drop off down to 32, 33. He's actually been at that 35 range for quite some time, somewhere between 35 to 37-ish. And then this year and a half has actually madded up his average to make it look like now he's reached 100 tests. Oh, you were always shit, when that was never actually the case.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that it's basically the last 18 months, like you said, has sort of skewed his stats in terms of sort of what they were. As you said, it was 35 at one point, and it's dropped down slightly, and that sort of shows the sort of increasing decline that we've seen with him in the last 18 months. And
so what do you think? Because of that stat I've just shown you, the fact it was 35 at the start of 2024, what do you see him doing? Retiring after Jamaica? Or do you see him taking a break, looking at his stats and going, nah, I can't go out with an average of 32 and a half. I've got to bring that back.
It's hard to know, you know, because he's not someone who gives many interviews, or he's not like someone who sort of talks like, you don't know whether he's someone who cares about his stats in that way. Because, you know, some players are obsessed with their stats, right? Don't be thinking about it. Others will just be like, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to go when I go. I personally think he'll retire after the series, just because it's our last home test for a while, right? Another year. So that could play a part in it. And also the fact he got his landmark of 100 tests, he played a test at Barbados. He might just see it as a swan song, or he could just go down the route of, you know, I'm still 32 years old. I can have another crack for Barbados Pride regional season. Hold on.
There's a third option, you know.
What, Ron?
Maybe man reinvents himself and starts hitting the T20 circuit. Can you see man doing an about turn and saying, "No, you know what? 100 tests. I'm out of Test cricket. Time to go hit that T20 franchise circuit." That would be the maddest plot twist of all time.
But you know what? He's not even old enough. Like, it's possible he could reinvent himself. He's still only 32 years old, so that would actually be mad. But I was just thinking, Mash, when we were talking, the audacity, just going off tangent, the audacity of man to still say that Chris Gayle was a T20 mercenary when he was averaging 42 after 103 tests. These times we're praying Louis can get to 20, just the 20 average. And we had the audacity as a fan base to cuss out Chris Gayle, you know.
If people could go back in time and be told when Gayle retired from Test cricket, or was forced out of Test cricket, whichever way you look at it, in 2014, if people could go back in time and be told then, you're never going to see someone average over 35 again in your lifetime, I wonder if the narrative would have changed back then in 2014.
Even someone messaged us the other day and said his 3-3-3 in Sri Lanka was on a flat pitch, so it wasn't the same quality as all these other triple centuries. I said, listen, man, it's absolute madness. But Mash, we've talked on Braithwaite. I think we kind of had a consensus that it's very likely he won't be playing at Sabina Park. Louis, obvious choice to come in. Just quickly, as we're 48 hours away from that first test starting, obviously a day-night test as well. Do you see any other changes for the side?
Yeah, I can see. Actually, I was about to say I can see Anderson Phillip being left out for Warwican to come back. The people that I've spoken to in Jamaica are telling me that the pitch looks like it will be flat. Well, is there really a flat pitch when West Indies are playing? But they're telling me it looks like it's going to be flatter than the pitches in Barbados and Grenada. But then it's a day-nighter, so I don't know if it matters if it's flatter, because what matters is the ball and at what time of the day you're actually playing the match. or the time of the day you're batting and stuff. So I don't see why we'd bring a spinner in for a pink ball test, but if the pitch is going to be a flatter pitch, maybe they'll think that they need one. But Santokie, I guess the argument that I'd say to you is, given that the batting's the weakness, do they drop Philip and actually bring in Imlach or Anderson to just strengthen the batting lineup? Because Graves takes wickets, right? So you don't. Who's us? So you've got what? Jaden Seals, Alzari Joseph, number 70, and Justin Graves, right? Do you really need another seamer on top of that? Do you think, or would you bring in the extra batter?
I would. It's hard. I would bring in the extra batter just because I think Anderson Phillip sort of didn't show enough in the last test. Like you said, Graves came in and took the wickets, and I think we need that batting reinforcement. I think they'll go with Imlach if they do go for that option, just because he's played Test cricket. Before we could see a straight swap, Casey Carty and go out and Kevin Anderson come in.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that as well, to be fair. Yeah,
Anderson out here with Chris Gale stats in domestic cricket, averaging 44. Obviously, international is a big jump up, but they could say, you know what, let's just throw this guy in for the third test. And
so you think there might be 3 changes?
Yeah, there could be 3 changes. Because if you think about it, from Sammy's perspective, we've already lost the series, right? So what have you really lose?
Yeah. So possibly Louis for Braithwaite, Anderson for Carty, and Imlach for Philip. I can see them giving Carty one more go, just because I think Carty's a Sammy guy and they want to see him succeed. But again, we'll see.
Well, we said Jangu was a Sammy guy. Jangu got cut. But Mash, just going back to your point as well, I know the Jamaica Cricket Association, I think it was in the Observer today, did say that they weren't happy with sort of the spiciness of the pitches in Barbados and Grenada. And so they alluded to the fact that this pitch will be sort of flatter. So we could see big scores. If it is a flat pitch, it's ominous for West Indies because Australia are, of the 2 sides, the more likely to take advantage of a flat pitch and hit a 300 plus total. But we rally as always, Mash. Obviously, we've been privileged enough to have great timings for the test so far. This one's a day-night one, so we got to put our nightcaps on. I think it starts at 7:30 in UK time, finish about 2 a.m. each day's play. But we rally and hope that, even though the series is lost, there's World Test Championship points at stake. Darren Sammy's declared, he's targeting the final in 2029 cycle. So let's try and make some movements up the table this cycle and build upon that title-winning season in the next cycle.
It's been the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you for listening, people. As ever, like, share, subscribe on your way out. If you want to support us, go to www.patreon.com/CaribCricket. Every little bit helps and counts. We also have a buy me a coffee. You can use that link in the description below. If you're a betting guy, go to our sponsors, Parlay Pros. Link is in the description below to register your interest. They use a high-tech data tool to let you know what are the best bets to lay down. If you're inclined in that direction, use the link. Or use Super Chat, Super Thanks, etc. But either way, we'll be back very, very soon because the 3rd test is due to start. I've been Mash, Santokie's been Santokie. We've been the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.